Let's review the minutes from September 17th. Any additions, deletions, corrections? Hearing none, we'll approve those. New business, REMAC approval for syringe epinephrine kit program needed. So it's called SEC. That's the name of the
University of Rochester requests a formal written approval by REMAC for the SEC program to take effect within a given region. So I have the necessary paperwork for you to sign, presuming the doctors will approve it.
And so why is University of Rochester spearheading? Are they putting them together or something?
Yeah, they're running the demonstration project.
Oh, it's a demo project, okay. All right. I don't see any objection to that. Anybody else have any objections to that? All right. All those in favor? Fisher, come on.
Yeah, favor.
All right. Schoharie County Critical Care Team requests approval of new agency medical director. It's an introduction, really.
Schoharie County Critical Care, they're requesting that Dr. Lewis Britton become their new agency medical director. I have the paperwork here. The paperwork is all in order.
Yeah, we know Dr. Britton. He works in the Bassett system.
Dr. Britton wasn't able to be here today at a family emergency.
Okay, all those in favor? He's a board certified. Well, he will soon be board certified. He just took his initial boards.
I'm at a meeting. I'll have to get you back.
We did, yeah, apparently.
You can be talking to
Okay. It's a new camera system.
All right, Middleburg is requesting approval of their new medical director. Middleburg here.
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Middleburg is asking for Dr. Joseph Luz to become their agency medical director.
Okay. Dr. Luz is a board-certified family physician in Schoharie County. Any opposed? All those in favor? Okay. Dan Johari wants to do BLS Narcan.
I have a request here signed by their captain and by Dr. Fisher, their medical director.
Okay, and this is so this is BLS procedure now. Police are doing this, right? Geez.
Everybody is doing it.
Yeah. The druggies are doing it. Okay. So any opposed to this? Okay. All those in favor? All right. Walton requests approval, same deal.
Right, Dr. Freeman has sent us a written request that they be allowed to go with Narcan, and has shown a list of folks that have been trained in its use already, in fact.
Yeah. I think Delaware has its share of heroin overdoses. You see the, you watch the paper of the arrests and the overdoses, and it seems like if it's more prevalent in rural areas or not, but it seems pretty prevalent.
Yeah.
All right, so Walton, all those in favor? Aye.
I have, before we come to Westford, Dr. Leinhardt, if I may, I have a request, a written request. Just received this morning an application for approval of the agency BLS CPAP from the Walton Fire Department Emergency Squad also. And that is fully signed off on.
All right, so just remind me, Dr. Mark, what's the status of CPAP for BLS?
It's state approved.
Okay. So it's out of the demo of your All right, and they have a medical director. It requires a medical director to have it, right?
Yeah, the medical director has approved it also in writing as the captain of the squad.
All right, so Walton, request for BLS CPAP with medical director approval. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Now we're up to Westford.
Westford
Same thing.
sent me a, October 20th sent me a
Reports the use.
reporting form indicating the use of BLS CPAP, and apparently the patient was assisted measurably by the pre-hospital use of it. Just as a point of information, they sent me the form.
What had happened is we made that form through AAREMS to track these. And it was one of the uses that we just had a fantastic outcome. So it's proving to be beneficial for the BLS CPAP. They're a first responder agency.
So how does it work from a 911 standpoint if the call comes in for acute dyspnea and Westford shows up with their CPAP? Is there an ALS intercept in progress, or is it sort of?
There are first responders. There's a transporting agencies also dispatched.
Oh, okay, so there's first responder. And how about in the case of a BLS ambulance service? Is ALS still en route? because of the
ALS
chief
is
complaint?
requested once you're putting CPAP on the patient.
Oh, okay, so it's an automatic.
Respiratory stress should be a delta, and ALS should be responding anyway.
Right, okay. So it doesn't obviate that request. Okay.
The Westford first responders will go in with the ambulance if the ambulance that comes for transport isn't certified?
It's going to have to be an ALS agency, which would be certified. If it's a BLS agency, it's going to be a delta call, and ALS will have to be doing it.
But what if ALS is delayed and the patient needs to get in the ambulance and go to the hospital?
A certified personnel must go with them.
All right. DOH advises of basic life support first responder updates received and approved from East Worcester Fire Department, Gloversville, Tunionianta, informational only.
I think Joe Farrell can bring us up to date on that just a little bit, about the BLSFR updates.
Yeah, basically what we're doing is any BLSFR agency that hasn't updated their information in the past recent time, which is actually 2015, we're sending in letters asking them to re-update it. And it really only is for, so we can determine how many BLSFRs are actually providing 911 service, and our, it's also for budgeting reasons when it comes to training monies. That's what we got. I did notice in the minutes, though, you have it listed as a recertifying. They're not recertifying.
Recertifying, right.
They're updating their information.
Updating, sorry about that, yeah. There are a few apparently that are in our region that have not responded yet.
A few.
A few. Only a
We're
few.
sending out, I'm sending out second letters reminding them again. We're not gonna just deactivate their number until they don't respond to us 2 or 3 times. You know, we'll just deactivate it.
So do some of these agencies also run ambulance services like Gloversville and East Worcester?
These are all BLS first responders, Gus.
To the fire department.
I know, but do they also run an ambulance?
They do not. They do not have a transporting agency.
So this is the sole EMS product out of that fire department?
So what's RGL?
Rockville,
Rockwood, Grosville,
Salesville.
Lassesville.
So it's
It's
three
in a
towns.
little corner of Fulton County.
Those 3 towns in one.
Okay. Report, this is another informational only regional BLS, that just got that, right?
Yeah, we just had that.
Okay. Adopting a suggested transfer of patient care form, right? So Phil resent the 5 extant reforms reviewed. I'm sure everybody did their homework. I think they were delivered in like June. May.
Actually.
So we've had a while to look at these. I don't think anybody's, I have not looked at them. I had them like stacked and didn't go anywhere. Does anybody have any experience with all of these? Anybody want to express an opinion that we should outright adopt one of these? Phil, can you just remind us like what the 5 contestants are?
I'm sorry, what?
The 5 contestants. So there's like GAVAC, there's Rural Metro, right?
Right, Remo is one of them.
Remo has one.
And EMS Charts had a few in there. The EPCR software provider had a few in there that they use. They have several different versions that they use, and those were only presented to the doctors for review, just to see what stuff is requested.
So there's Remo has one. Remo has a generic one?
Remo has one, yeah, a generic one that they recommend for, I don't know, but I'm not sure whether they make it mandatory or not for their transporting agencies, or their non-transporting agencies to have such. Their transporting agencies that use EPCRs would probably use this form that Remo has.
Okay, so if we adopted Remo, for example, the EPCR vendors and companies that are out there and agencies that are using them could just import it as sort of their standard, leave it the shop, report. That's what they're doing.
My understanding is that the REMAC can adopt this as the mandatory transfer of patient care form or as a strongly suggested one, so long as the agency uses something of that nature.
Okay.
Could we just say that it has to be something like this, or including, because if there are agencies that are successfully using some other form, and they've been using it fine without, any difficulty for some time, keep using it, as long as it includes the same information. And for those agencies who don't have something, we can give them whatever form.
The REMAC physicians have a great deal of discretion.
I hate to make people do work if what they're doing isn't broken. But for people who don't have something, we could give them something.
We could easily send the Remo form around and say, we strongly suggest that the form that you use contain these data points, or however you want to word it. It's up to you guys and gals.
The form that you guys created is simple and straightforward.
Who's you guys?
Which agency is yours, Phil? Which is your agency?
Speculator.
Speculator came up with a form. That was simple and straightforward. When I looked at Air Methods form, which is included in there, it's pretty in-depth.
Patients are supposed to be also.
Yes, so it's a different.
Do all of them have, and I guess here's the other way to ask the question, do all of them have enough minimum data to satisfy receiving ED?
I know ours does, but, and I'm sure Remo does. I'm sure it does.
Okay, so all these will surpass the bar for minimum data? Is that the general belief?
Yeah, I agree.
Something's better than nothing, I guess. That's the basic principle. Okay.
Okay, how would you like me to send this?
Just
What kind of wording would you like me to use when I send this around?
We're doing a quick review here. I think the principle is that you have to leave something. So if you don't have anything, we would recommend.
Any of these.
Let's just recommend Remo as the replacement. If a squad has no EPCR and is looking for the minimum data set, let's just adopt Remo as the minimum data set. Then we're in concert with the rest of our protocol region.
Okay.
But it doesn't preclude the EMS charge people from submitting theirs or GABAC from changing theirs, rural metro, or speculator, or air method. All right?
Actually, the one we use now is pretty much of it's speculator because we're not electronic. So we just hand a copy of the PCR over when we get to the hospital. But the form that we have in the group there is sort of just a worksheet that we use in the ambulance before we put the PCR together. But it still has all the necessary stuff in it.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, it's just, what we're talking about is a document that gets brought in with the patient and left with the patient.
Okay.
If you look at policy 1203, which is the electronic PCR policy, which is where a lot of this stems out of, it states in there that, we just lost it, scrolling up to see what the policy number is. EMS agencies are required to leave a paper copy or transfer the electronic PCR information to the hospital prior to the EMS service leaving the hospital. This document must minimally include patient demographics, presenting problem, assessment findings, vital signs, and treatment rendered.
Okay, so all these forms.
So, but I mean, as long as it has that, any form would be acceptable.
Right.
So we need to put out a statement that says, if you don't have it, make sure you get it, reference that.
What was that
Here's
statement
some
number?
samples.
1203 is the newest policy statement for PCRs.
It's only been there for 3 years.
Huh?
It's only been there for 3 years. Most of us haven't read it yet.
Oh, three.
But I mean, it's not just, I can tell you from for doing checks at hospitals, it's not just EPCRs that aren't getting out. People aren't writing, even guys on paper aren't scribbling out something.
Right, so this, we're talking about the something. So that's the minimum data set. We're going to adopt REMO as the default if you don't have another already, document in the can.
Whatever you use has to be compliant with this policy. Done.
And it's okay to try to talk to the doctor also. We can still use verbal communication in addition to.
But there still has to be,
There has to be something.
This is in addition, that's right.
Okay, is that clear enough as a stance?
I'll send that out by way of a memo to all the agencies and tell them that, this is the default if you're not using one now. I'm not really sure how prevalent funny way to put it, how prevalent the non-compliance is in the region. I haven't really heard specifically from hospitals about it.
I think it's the EPCR group that's most at risk for doing that, right? So it's the well-equipped agencies with electronic PCR now that would like to or have a predilection to deliver it later.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not allowable. DOH says must be left before you leave the hospital. So we're talking about what must be left part.
I know within the past couple of days I've had occasion to speak with the chief operating officer of a couple of agencies about the abysmal handwriting on the PCRs. Just hardly decipherable.
Well, I also have a question. In the agency we use for Amsterdam, we have a form made up that has all that information. The hospital has built a a screen that the nurses, when we give our report, enters all that information that's in policy statement 1203 onto the screen when they're putting the patient in the computer. So do we still need a piece of paper?
No, it sounds like they've created this different kind of interface that equates to the same purpose.
Okay. Because we had the form and we were using the form, we got away from the form.
Written.
It's going to be written. It's going to be in the patient's chart, doesn't it?
It is in the patient's chart.
It will be.
They're doing computerized.
It can be.
but you're counting on the fact that the nurse actually put all that information in. What if the nurse is, busy actually taking care of the patient while you're turning the patient over or something? The policy statement says leave something in writing.
Do you enter the data?
Or electronically.
We enter it.
It says electronically or
You're
in writing.
leaving something electronic or in writing.
Didn't say electronic transfer?
Right.
When you read that?
Your documentation needs to be there.
Right, but for the most part, when we turn the patient over, the nurse is asking me those questions, I'm turning the patient over, somebody else is coming in the room prepping the patient, and all that, the patient demographics, the vital signs are all being entered into the computer, exactly what we did for them. And then when that's done and the patient's up and running in the computer, they put the gum in, somebody else comes in and puts the band on the patient's wrist. And
Is
then
the hospital satisfied that they're meeting that requirement? Okay.
I know even at
that's not
Equal
compliant.
Tour, most of the time the nurses, I'm standing next to them when I'm giving them a report as they're entering the information. If it's a critical patient and they're busy, I'll just try to jot down the demographics quick on a piece of paper and make sure that it's on the computer and tell them everything's on the computer, but still give them the verbal report. But 99% of the time they're standing right there if it's not a critical patient and you're standing next to them while they're entering the information.
So it's a verbal.
Mary, is that in compliance with the policy statement?
I don't think so.
No,
No.
it has to be a written
Read the
copy.
policy again?
I'm just reading it now.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think that's great, and that is how it should happen every time. There should
EMS
be verbal
services are required to
communication.
leave a paper copy or transfer the electronic PCR information to the hospital prior to the EMS service leaving the hospital.
Isn't the
This
RN,
document,
isn't that RN who's entering that screen basically transferring the electronic information?
that's not the PCR.
No.
No.
It's
That's
not,
the
but
hospital's documentation, not yours.
That's their synopsis of what you did. What if she mishears something?
They have to transfer.
I mean,
I think that policy is what, dated 3 years, 4 years back? And maybe that policy hasn't caught up with the new electronic era of the hospitals. Like the hospitals now have that capability to give
Vicky,
a
if you
verbal
tell a
report.
nurse,
That's right.
I mean, I'm not knocking any
I
nurse,
would
but
not
it's
recommend
busy, it's
leaving the house
noisy.
of the hospital.
If you tell a nurse that the blood pressure was, 120 on 80, and they write down that the pressure was 80 on palp or something, just
Right.
because they're throwing fast, miss a box.
Nothing against,
And I'm not knocking a nurse.
you're responsible for your documentation, and I wouldn't leave it to the hospital staff to.
It's almost like
to
if
put
the
in.
hospital could print that screen and hand it to you, that would suffice.
If you agreed with it and put your name on it, why not just do it yourself? I think the purpose of, the intent of that policy was to assure that EMS agencies were leaving the critical information for the hospitals.
Well, the next
And
bullet
the
point,
EMS agency is responsible for that.
the next bullet point, failure to leave patient information with the emergency department upon the delivery of the patient may compromise medical treatment and interrupt the continuity of care.
Yeah, well, their argument is that they are leaving information, it's just, how it gets into the.
But you're
hospital.
counting on the fact that that's going to work every time. Because if it, if the screen goes dead, if the computer dies, if the nurse gets it wrong, it's your fault.
The whole
You're not
document's
leaving
going to the
information.
hospital within an hour anyway.
Right, but this is time zero.
Right, you're
What?
supposed to leave,
Now,
hit the transmit before
there
you
is
leave
a-
the
That's had her
hospital.
arm in the air
there
for
is a
an hour.
caveat to this. The patient records have to be provided to the receiving hospital at the time the patient care is transferred, or a predetermined written plan with the hospital must be in place.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So do you have a predetermined, did you
Written
guys
plan.
come up with a plan in writing that this is acceptable?
We did,
Hey.
when we initially built the screen plan.
Well, then there it is.
Then maybe you're okay with it. It just says required to leave a paper.
Unless there's a
Or
written
they-
plan.
Unless there's a written plan.
Or they can
Electronically
transfer.
I feel like we
Right.
can't approve something that's outside of what the policy statement says.
Does hospitals have a requirement to have PCRs in the charts?
Yes,
For,
JACO.
I didn't know if it was
New York-
JACO
New
or,
York State.
or the trauma or whatever, so,
it's
I
in
mean,
Spark.
just transferring it, I guess you guys, when you send the PCR within an hour, it does
That's
end
it.
up in the chart, but
Yeah, it's about time zero, really when it matters. All right, so they may be covered by the agreement.
Just make sure it's an up-to-date agreement.
Yeah, just make sure there's actually a written agreement between the agencies.
I want to bring up a quick question on the EPCR transfer. How soon, once you transmit it, are they getting there? Sometimes it's very quickly. When we're transmitting it, we hit the send. When we're at the ER, it's there before we're actually at the door. Other times, I'm hearing, and specifically from Cooperstown, that it's taking that 45 minutes to an hour to get there. For whatever reason, through our EPCR server, the lines down, I don't know.
But Ed, that's a different issue. The policy statement says you have to do it by the end of your shift.
Right, so is...
And that's why you're leaving the other documentation with the patient. That's
So-
not an issue here.
I just want to see if that's what the ERs are saying, they're getting that information.
I don't know, personally.
Okay.
It's I think an hour into a patient's care, we're generally not looking for the pre-hospital information. Hopefully we had what we needed at time zero. All right. Well, I like the interface between these two systems ideally is electronic, right?
And I think we're a small enough area and close-knit with our area hospitals too, that if there's an issue, there's a phone call made immediately. I can see Ellis or Albany, fine, but when we're dealing with, we're a small community. I know most of the nurses. We all know most of the nurses. We work closely with them. I don't know of any of them that wouldn't hesitate to call up and say,
The
Well,
issue, I
it's-
think,
I've seen it where there was critical information that wasn't transmitted at time zero. And it gets discovered, yeah, we can make a phone call and say, could you send us that strip?
and
And
then
they were
where's the
like, tacking
responsibility
along at
lay on
160.
the administrative of that agency with that provider, to fix that problem? I mean, it shouldn't be a continuing problem. I mean, is it small enough that it's just a specific provider problem that
No, I
can
don't
be addressed,
think so.
rather
I
than
think
an
it's more
agency?
generic.
I can tell you that this topic, I don't know if any of you docs went to the staff meeting, but it took up a large chunk of the staff meeting about PCRs not being left at the facilities.
Yeah. I would add, to that little data set that the DOH specified in 1203, I would add rhythm strips, because a lot of times they're documenting EKGs and rhythm strips, and they don't necessarily leave them. So
Well, the other piece of that is with a patient identifier on them.
yeah, that's a tall order. But if it came in like stapled to their paper report, I'd be happy. Yeah. But anyway, it just really has to do with transmitting the information that might make a difference in that patient's care and getting it to the hospital at time 0, as opposed to 0 plus some interval of time, which makes it, effectively useless. It's too late. And we also don't want to be on different channels, right? So these are independent legal entities as well. So the hospital wants all the information up front. And they want it to be congruent with what gets documented in the PCR when it comes across the printer at some future time. So we just want to make sure we're on the same patient with the same data. So I would include electronic imaging of electrocardiographic imaging on top of the data set. So,
Relationships like what you guys are describing between the hospital and the agency are phenomenal, and if it's included or if it's compliant with this policy by having a written statement, that's obviously the best way to go, is for the agency to be working it out with the hospital that they primarily go to. It's perfect. People are talking together, and that's absolutely the way to go. We just don't want to be not compliant with the policy statements that are in effect right now.
When I send this little memo out, I'll send a copy of 1202 out along with it, 1203, pardon me, along with it. And
Phil, since you're going to blast this, I would cite 1203, cite the REMO default, and any electronic ECG imaging, rhythm strips, 12 leads, etc.
Or any interventions is included.
Oh, Rainbow has it. Pictures of the cards. Okay. All right. Any other discussion about that? Everybody sort of stalled. It sounds like, if the EPCR was electronically delivered to the hospital at the time of arrival, that would be ideal. It would probably go right into that same page, and you would get rid of that page. But most agencies want to mess with the EPCR in greater detail after the fact. So, probably for a variety of reasons. So that's why this was created. All right. That's that. Any new business? Go ahead.
With the protocols, the way they're going now, it's kind of statewide. There's 15 regions that are involved in this. So what they're doing is cutting down, so each region gets one vote, and that vote will be controlled by me and people giving me input or my designee, the medical director's designee. Just an awareness thing, just to make things.
Back up a little bit. So you're talking about 15 regional protocols now?
No, 15 regions involved in the one protocol. So when we write our
The
protocols.
collaborative protocol.
15 regions involved in the collaborative protocol?
Yes.
Wow, really
Yeah.
took off.
Is it now called the New York State?
It's working on it, so it's just to make life easy, they gave each one.
Because we started out with like 18 ALS regional protocols, right? Is there now 15 are bundled into one, and then we have New York City and one other recalcitrant
Is it back
group,
to the inability to have a
statewide
statewide
protocol.
protocol?
Yeah, so we had hoped that that would happen.
So it's happening.
Who are the regions that are not New York City?
Yeah, New York City.
And
New York City, Nassau, and Suffolk.
Yep. They have different needs, clearly.
No.
Yeah.
But what about the
They're
surgery?
just
The
better.
patients are different.
Central New York is Central New York is separate still?
Is that mid-state or?
No, it's Central New York.
It's at 3 of them.
Yeah.
Mid-state, Jefferson County,
Well, there's 18 regions, right?
yeah.
If there are 15, and
These three.
Suffolk, Nassau, and New York are not included, The rest of them are on.
I believe Susie Supernat from Central New York is an active contributor to the collaborative protocols.
There it is.
Have they signed in blood, though?
Congratulations,
Questions?
my friend.
All right, good.
And the other thing
That'll
is,
make life easier.
I don't know much about it, but the region can be a Narcan distributor, you know, a distribution center, and there's state funds available for that.
I don't know how Narcan is being distributed. Canajoharie, we just approved for BLS Narcan, that was the site back in October of that extraordinary meeting where whoever came in the door was given a packet containing 2 vials of Narcan, a needle and a syringe, because they didn't have any atomizer tips, so they gave me a needle and syringe. And
That was carrier pigeon.
something to the effect of, we hope you know how to use these things. I guess the guy who reported to me was one of the guys from the Canajoharie Fire Department. He said, where did they get all that free Narcan from? And I said, I wish I knew. But
Well, the state has approved for each region, there's like $15,000 sitting out there to run it, and then apparently they supply the Narcan for free.
Really?
They're
So-
supplying $15,000 to facilitate administration and training. I know REMS is using their $15,000, a portion of it, to have a CIC that goes around to the fire departments to give education. And as I said, I don't know who's running it, but I've heard the same, that there's $15,000 per region available.
Okay, so I just got all the information from Remo. I can forward that to you,
I'd love to see it, absolutely.
and then we can make a move on it. And that can be done, we need to approve that, or just do it?
Recommend.
Yeah.
Great.
Get the money.
I'd love to, because this is,
Try to take the money.
this is the first I heard about the 15K, the very first.
And it's very easy to get,
Great,
is what I was told, so.
super.
There's been police agencies that have been equipped with it for over a year now.
Right.
How did they get distributed, do we know? If that's what we don't know.
Attorney General's office, yes. Attorney General's office did a bunch of training for law enforcement. Went out, did training, here's an hour, you know, this is Narcan, here, go get them.
Catholic Charities has been the big
Yeah.
behind the scenes. That's the one that's been doing a lot of the free training
Yeah.
for the public.
For the public, yeah.
They've been
Is
doing
the
the family
state
training
changing its
also.
methodology to distribute now and saying EMS region, here's the money, here's the
Do not know.
drug, go?
You know, Joe?
All right, sounds
Yeah,
like.
they,
That's
No, I mean, even OFPC, all the state fire instructors since a year and a half ago, at every instructor's authorization, it's been a couple hundred SFIs that have been. They go in for the training, they get their demonstration kits, and they can train agencies that need the training, fire agencies.
are the kits all the
Right.
same? I got a little blue kit when I went to
Yeah,
the.
that's what the OFPC is distributing, it's a little blue,
That's what they distributed.
It's not gonna go too far, though. I mean,
To
so-
the public that came in.
The sustained supply, where does it come from?
That's the problem.
oh, this kid's got,
Seriously.
2 ampules, the atomizers, everything's in the little,
Right.
And some of them are giving them a prescription, so they can go to get
Ah.
it supplied.
So the fire
The question
departments,
is,
the
where's it
police
coming
are
from?
doing it?
I don't know, but.
not on the fire department end. I mean, the SFI can go in and do the instruction, but the agency has to make their own arrangements as far as securing the drug and the administration of the program. They just provide the training.
They're attempting to create a Narcan shortage by just giving all these people who are never going to
Yeah.
use it something to throw in the trunk of their car.
I hope they're shipping it in like a Wells Fargo, armored vehicle, because if it's 15 grand and a ton of Narcan, that's like, that'd be a good capture for the junkies out there.
Just as a side note, we did have a trooper administer Narcan the other night to an overdose. He was there within a matter of minutes. It was pretty cool.
Is there any county that hasn't had a heroin overdose death? I think all the counties have had heroin overdose.
Southern Hamilton County had 3 of them in one day back in April. 3 heroin overdoses in a 3-hour period one day, believe it or not.
All the same story?
Well, 2 were connected and the third one wasn't, believe it or not. I was all a speculator. Swinging down, right, you got that right.
Okay. This is the creative period of the meeting. Any other ideas, things to bring forward as new business?
Question about the protocols, will you bring back things to this group to let us know what's going on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just as a matter, while on the subject of protocols, I'm just curious how often the Android protocol app is being used. Do you hear comments about it? Have you had occasion to use it much yourselves in the field or whatever? I'm just curious. It's a very user-friendly app. I'm just wondering how often it's being used, if you heard anything. Okay.
Well, that's exciting. So to make life easier at the state level, because there's only 3 protocols in the state. It'll give the CMAC something to do besides approving region by region by region. Yeah. All right, any other business? All right.
We have no business warranting an executive session today. So
Any introductions?
Yes, introductions. Again, my name is Joe Gazzola, Town of Hancock. Today I brought up, so I met with the director, Dr. Richard Berg, at the last meeting. Some people had some questions that I was unable to answer, so I brought him up today to introduce him to the group. And for any questions or comments or concerns that he passed on, and help him with what can be a good medical director, what he can do.
Yeah, the Service Medical Director's agreement is standardized. Phil, you probably signed one already. It's pretty daunting if you believe or rely on it. And I forget with Hancock, why it surfaces a question.
It's not a service question, just an introduction, because she asked him about his training and everything else.
Okay.
It's just more of a formal introduction. If you had any questions to ask him directly, he's here today to answer any questions.
All right. Thanks. Welcome. Any other business? All right, we'll adjourn.
adjourned at 11:12.
It's a record, right?
Wow. Call you this for that. No.